Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy help define our contemporary world. My guest today is the Director General of the Bureau of Police Research and Development Training, looking at those dimensions of the police agencies around India. She has worked extensively at many layers and many levels of the police department in India. She was the first woman recruit of the Indian Police Service. She's won the Raman Magsaysay Award. She has written extensively, several books, including 2 autobiographies. She has managed 2 not-for-profit organizations, and wherever she has worked, she has brought qualities of courage, daring, innovation, self-confidence, and an enormous sense of vitality and energy. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Kiran Bedi.
Glorious.
Well, you know, I had this little piece of paper to recount the many things that you had done, and I realized that that would take up the whole program. Of the many things and identities that you have, what is the central identity for you as a police officer, as a police woman, as a one-time women's tennis champion, Asian champion? There's so many different identities. Any one of them would have earned you enough credit and applause for an ordinary person's lifetime.
I think if I have my own, what is the identity in my own mind? Is
your self-image. I mean, what you
is just of being a doer. I'm basically a doer, and I totally respect time. I'm a doer. I do. Any minute there is something to do, and I do. And even when I sleep, I sleep. So it is doing sleep. So it is doing. I think I'm basically a doer. If I go back to my school days, I've been a doer. Playing when it's playing, studying when it's studying, and being home with mom, dad when it's being home with mom, dad, and be at work, it's at work. If it's walk, it's walk. And when it's prayer and meditations. So I think it's being a doer.
Well, that sense of living in the present is a very spiritual act, and you sort of earned sort of international recognition for your work as the Inspector General or the head of the Tihar jail. And amongst the many innovations there was the introduction of meditation, and you're a practitioner of Vipassana. What does meditation and Vipassana do for you? You start your day with that.
I actually end my day with it. I sit, before I sleep, I meditate. I think it totally, it's made me a complete person within. I'm not looking for noise. I'm not looking for any extra. I can be complete within myself. Meditation has made me a world within my own self. I have a world of my own, and I'm very happy with it. So I'm not seeking out, I'm not looking for, it's stopped my seeking. It just makes me be with myself, and I'm complete, I'm happy. I'm happy with no movement at all, no noise at all. The stillness, I think that's what, so it's, I think, made me taste it, and I think it's got digested into it.
Meditation is a cultivation of stillness, and you've talked about stillness and settling the noise. What then is the impetus for action for you in what is fundamentally associated with an unpleasant world? You're dealing with crime, you're dealing with sort of difficult situations, the unpleasant, the worst of society in some ways, whether it's prisoners in Tihar and who you're seeking to reform, narcotics, and a whole range of issues. So what is your impetus to action? Why do you reach out to this sort of terrible world?
You know what? I think it heightens your sense of duty. It heightens your sense of conscientiousness. It heightens your sense of focus. It heightens your sensitivity. Because when you're meditating, you're very sensitive to your own sensations. So you get sharper and sharper as you meditate. And you're exactly self-observing. So you're actually practicing personal sensitivity. How can you then not be sensitive to the larger world? So I think and it also increases your focus because you're totally concentrating on your own self. So when you are into an external duty, your sense of conscientiousness and focus and all this then, and sensitivity, and realizing others' pain and joy, I think increases.
Yet ironically, meditation and these practices were initially designed and taught to people living in mountain caves and not engaging in the everyday world. And I think a common experience is that if you're meditating, you become very sensitive and you can't deal with the unpleasant of the everyday world. You have remarkably synthesized that. Do you ever experience any conflict?
On the contrary, the conflicts went away. On the contrary, it made me absolutely fearless. On the contrary, it has made me greater to say things in a more daring way. And I'm not worried about tomorrow. On the contrary, it's made me more courageous. Absolutely secure within. I've seen a big change in myself before and after. There are no fears about tomorrow. What's going to happen to my job? Which posting am I going to go into? Etc. etc. There can be a lot of personal fears. There can be professional fears. There are no apprehensions. I'm just not bothered. What comes tomorrow? What is my focus is what do I do today? This comes out of this remarkable practice of meditation and living your meditation. It's not eyes closed. It's actually meditating with eyes open. So a stage comes when you are no more only meditating with eyes closed. You are actually living that life with eyes open.
Wherever you have been, you have stuck your neck out in a sense and stood up and done things. Sometimes you've been, sent off to mundane jobs which haven't really fulfilled your abilities. What do you find the most challenging? You could be doing so many different things. Why the police force?
I think it's the finest service you can do. It's like the doctor's surgical healing. I think you can be a general practitioner and you can be a surgeon. And a surgeon is the one who goes deeper. I think I was born to be this. I was already inclined towards a very heightened sense of justice and a very, very personally disciplined, very hardworking, totally outdoor, and always have the courage to stand up for what must be stood. It came through me. I started to see myself like that as a tennis player, always speaking up for against discrimination. I was myself being discriminated as a tennis player, getting lower returns of my travel ticket than the boys would get. Even when I was India's #1, I would still get first class fare, where a boys junior would get an airfare. So at that, and I was 17, 16, 18, and at that time going up to and who mattered to me, because my ranking mattered and my next trip overseas mattered. And yet I would walk up to him saying, "Uncle, you've not been fair. I don't need this. If you're going to be discriminating, uncle, keep this with you, and I would rather not have this," and walk away with that. So I think that sense of, and then speaking up sometimes for others, not for myself, taking up others on myself. I think it was natural. I think it was moving totally by sanskara. It was moving towards that path. And when finally the crunch came to write the first preference in the UPSC form, I wrote the Indian Police Service as a first preference over central services. And imagine, and my colleague overlooking my form said, "Don't you know there are no women in the Indian Police? What are you going to do there?" I said, "Doesn't matter to me whether they're there. I didn't even know that." I said, "That's where my destiny seems to be taking me." And you see that the NCC cadet as a 14-year-old girl, I was 100%er on NCC, the best cadet all the 4 years of my NCC. All this was taking me towards this ultimate goal without knowing Indian Police Service. But government service was in my mind, because that is what Daddy had dreamt for me. My mother and father dreamt for me. They hadn't dreamt business for me, even though family had hotels and business properties running. But they didn't have business. They didn't have money in mind. They had service in mind.
At this sort of evolved stage of your career, with so much recognition, gallantry medals and the Magsaysay Award and what have you, do you still feel gender becomes an issue in your own life and experience?
I've seen it happen. And you know what? Gender can be made an asset and gender can be made a liability. I only ended up making it an asset. If I had not done all that I did, it would have been a liability for me, even in this service. If I had not worked the way I did, I didn't work to prove a point. I didn't work to prove that gender is better. I didn't do it to prove anything. I did it because that was my duty to do. But believe me, if I had not worked the way I did, it would have been a liability. But it turned out to be an asset because right kind of attitudes went with that kind of work.
You're watching a conversation with, she's been described as Kiran Bedi, super cop. Kiran Bedi, we'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to a continuing conversation with Dr. Kiran Bedi. We were talking about gender and you know, the fact that, you know, you feel it's a positive asset. But do you feel sometimes that you, the people in engaging with you in some ways, are either self-conscious that you're a woman, or that you know, you said discrimination is behind you. At one level, there's your story, but there's also the story of millions of other women, and you do columns in newspapers drawing upon, you know, your experience to, I mean, when I read them, I get the sense to, you know, empower them, give them the confidence to stand up for their rights, for their needs, for who they are. But what is your continuing experience? Have you been able to put that behind you and just be a human being? Has circumstance allowed you to do that? Do you still remain conscious, Emma?
No more. I don't think I was conscious of it even as I was aware of the indiscrimination which goes with the gender, and once I surmounted it, I think it was behind. But the fact is that I'm sensitive. I know what's going on, and I do know that even today, the way my seniors relate with me, they relate differently with a male colleague.
In what ways?
Well, they can't take me for granted. True, they can't take me for granted. Do you know what a male colleague to a male colleague can say? You go and do it. But they can't tell me that. They can't take me for granted because they still have to explore. They still have to know, and they're still not sure.
And they still have to learn what it means to deal with you, work with you.
They're not sure, and they're afraid of getting a no. They are afraid of getting a no, and they feel, oh, we could never get a no. How are we getting a no from here and getting that from a woman? I think that still exists. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm quite aware of their limitation, but I don't hold it against them. I take it in my stride.
Generosity of spirit. You know, you're currently looking after, you know, sort of research, training, and looking at how the police can improve itself, the evolution of the police force. You have quite a tough task on your hands, don't you? Because, you know, the perception of the police force, the experience that most people have of the police, wherever it is, you know, despite you know, Delhi police with you, for you, and all the jargon, is a pretty negative one. What's the principal challenge beyond changing perceptions, which PR agencies could do for you, or to try and do for you? What are some of the fundamental issues that you're confronting?
I think the leadership mindset. This is changeable if the leadership takes it on upon itself to change. But then they'll have to change themselves first. Change begins with them. I think by and large, we've ended up thinking that others should change first before I change. And that's why things have not changed, because we're wanting others to change first, people to change first, juniors to change first, politicians to think differently, okay? My colleagues to think differently. But rather than I change first, rather than I be the change, I want to see the change. I wait for others to change, and that's why every day we're slipping back, and only dry PR expensive campaigns do not work. That's why they haven't worked. Otherwise, I think a lot could have worked, certainly for Delhi police. Look at the kind of budget they've had for PR. And yet, if we do a study, there wouldn't be a very overwhelming percentage feeling secure or being friends of the Delhi police. Reason being that they are looking for something totally different. They're looking for a credible partnership. Credible and secure partnership. They don't get credibility, they don't get that kind of sense of finality, that if we go to a police station, our case will be registered. It will be justly investigated. Those two things are not yet sure. You still need to have a crutch to get a recommendation to say, iska kaam theek se karna, register kar lena, copy de dena. There's no, so I think only just PR campaigns are there. The leadership, and leadership is not only the police commissioner. Leadership is deputy commissioner, the IG, the station house officer, the head constable, the beat officer. This is the entire rung of leadership. But leadership has to come from the top, and they both all have to work as a family. We do not have a family culture in the policing. We have very strong hierarchical culture. That's why it doesn't work. That's why the hierarchy's father says, you change first. Tum meri izzat karo. You respect me. He'll say, you look after me, then I take care of you. So there is no coming together. I think that's where we've lost out and continue to lose out.
There's a great deal of sort of debate and discussions and commissions that are looking at reforming the police system and how you can bring about change in the systems, processes and structures, from salaries to benefits to training, and you're looking at aspects of training. And your life has demonstrated the enormous significance of personal transformation, the kind of human being you are, and you've talked about living in an unfolding present. But that unfolding present is circumscribed by systems and processes and structures, and not everybody has the energy, the conviction and the passion and the certitude and the clarity and the inner calm of a Kiran Bedi. So what are some of the elements that are the external elements, from your experience in so many different areas of policing, that you would like to sort of, you might draw attention on, and what are the buttons that you would really like to press?
Delegation. I think we don't delegate. We hold people back unnecessarily. Like for instance, my department has a budget, but the budget is not delegated. So if I want to deliver in no time, an impatient person like me who wants to cook the things right away and get the ingredients and have them on and say, here's the cook, now you cook, deliver it tomorrow. I neither have the money to buy the ingredients, nor do I know who do I buy it from. I have to say, I need the following dish, I need the following, could you please approve? By the time I've gone out of taste. I don't want that dish. Time's run out. The point, I think delegation, we do not believe in delegating. So I question that every time I've gone, is delegate. Please give me the power. If you trust me and I have that position, transfer that power. So once that comes, results start. I think we don't delegate. Similarly, my position doesn't delegate. Just as I'm seeking delegation, I further, as a mindset, do not delegate. I want to do it all myself, or hog the glory all myself and punish only, and yet I think we do not share, nor do we delegate. I think that's where I think the right kind of leadership is share and give, and seek to give. So, and question old practices and tell them where it's not working and offer them an option. The good news is that they are listening. The Home Ministry is listening. My Home Secretary is listening. And maybe in the weeks to come, this organization would be an empowered organization through financial delegation. Once that comes, this organization would play the role which it's supposed to play. That's my whole question. Well, why are you putting us here if we can't deliver? Why do you give us such a long charter when you're having our hands tied back? Unshackle so that I can meet the charter, or take the charter back. I think that makes sense. That's the questioning. You've got to question, why are you where you are? What is your constitution? And how do you deliver it? Moment you understand your constitution, moment you know why you're there, then go to the how and say, I have this, give me the how, so that I can deliver. And nobody, I think, comes in the way then. But there is a struggle. There is a struggle, there is a time lag, and there is even sometimes indifference. And there is sometimes, unpalatability about it, because you're questioning some. But over a period, everybody starts to gain, because the intention is not selfish. Intention is to justify the cause for which you are here through public exchequer.
I think we're watching an empowered police officer speak here with the kind of courage you wouldn't ordinarily associate with servicing an officer in the service of the government of India in whatever capacity, being self-critical of the system that you're serving. How and why do you get away with it? How do you manage to get away with this? In the sense that, ordinarily if someone stands up and criticizes the system, and there have been occasions in the past when you haven't been as established and Dr. Kiran Bedi with the reputation, the clout that you have, where you have stood up for the values you believe in and have been sent off to the remote corners of India.
Oh, they're all very beautiful. I tell you, the corners are the most beautiful. I'm so glad I went.
You turned them into opportunities, but obviously the perception of the establishment was, send her off to an industrial research organization, send her off to the Railway Protection Force, or wherever it was, and you turn them into opportunities. Even sort of superintendent of Tihar jail, it's not something that someone looks to for their careers. And you would just shunt it off. So what was this ability that enabled you to turn what would ordinarily be perceived as diversity into a great opportunity and a success? And today you can say the things that you want to without fear.
It's not today I'm saying it. I don't know. I think I said it as a tennis player before I joined the police. I think the same habit of sportsman spirit, not taking the foul, you know. You have a right to go to the umpire to say, hey, could you please relook, look at the camera and see. So questioning a call and then accepting the call if either you fair or I'm fair, but not play the unfair game. I think that traveled with me through my sports field. But the point goes back, is to, if you remain questioning within, what am I here for? Am I here to empty the bank account, or am I here to build a fixed asset or a fixed deposit? I'm always here to add to the bank and not to just drain it out. I'm here to see the bank account and fill it up with assets, with knowledge, with skills, with development, with contribution and service, and not to empty it out and leave it bankrupt.
And sort of like a satyagrahi, you know, and stand up and experience the implications and the consequences of standing up. You're watching a conversation with Dr. Kiran Bedi. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to a continuing conversation with Dr. Kiran Bedi. There are sort of, you have worked so extensively with prisoners. There's a whole issue, you know, right now, capital punishment. You have focused so much on the possibilities of reforming people, and that should be the emphasis. What is your position? What do you feel about capital punishment? Without really getting into a specific case, but philosophically and the principle of it.
I've seen people reformed. I've seen worst of the people reformed. So I have to have a belief in reform, because seeing is believing. I don't blame those who haven't seen reform. But I've seen and experienced reform in hundreds. I've seen dreadest of the gangsters cry once a self-realization comes. All they need is an environment of self-reflection. Give them, therefore I believe in giving opportunity to people who've committed heinous of the heinous crimes to be given an opportunity of reflection. And there are many, many methods of reflection. Meditation is one of the routes. Their education is a reflection. The educational programs which we did in the prison actually took them onto the roadmap of reflection when they started to read good stories and good books of Swami Vivekananda or Gandhiji's or Aurobindo or the gurus. We had the Bible. We had all those books in plenty circulated and we had a compulsory reading hour. Once they started to read, they started to listen to teachers, the Brahma Kumaris, the yoga teachers came, and they went through these art of living, and they went to Vipassana. There was an everyday, it was like a water falling onto the hardest of rock and finally making a hole. I've seen those holes being made, those people crying even on the before the camera, knowing that it will go public, yet say, take my message, hum sudhar sakte hain. We only need an environment.
What about the notion of capital punishment as deterrent? What about the notion of capital punishment as justice? If, you know, an eye for an eye, someone whose loved one has been killed, you know, wanting justice. You know, we keep looking, reading the newspapers whenever there is crime, of justice, not just justice per se, but justice for the families and the people who care about whoever's been killed. What would you say to people who want justice for someone close to them that's been murdered and say, well, you know, so-and-so murdered my wife, my sister, my whatever, now I want to see him dead?
I think revenge is one of the ways, but I don't think revenge quenches. Revenge does not really quench. I think restorative factor is a much bigger quencher. And I've seen restoration actually bringing humanity more and relief more and healing more than just mere revenge. Because revenge is, maine mara, usne bhi maar diya, khatam. But you're living with the sorrow of the dead. But when you start working on a reform and you see that person seeking forgiveness from you one day, you've actually healed and got healed yourself. I've seen this healing. So therefore I'm a very strong believer in healing. But I'm also a believer in that if you are, go ahead and give life imprisonment for life. Let the person die in the prison. But why are you killing him for his wife and children who haven't committed any crime? And therefore, let them be continuously evaluated. Let them have psychologists. We don't have a system of psychologists and psychiatrists in the prison. We just have NGOs visiting. Or we may have one psychologist for 10,000 people. That's not fair. I think we are unfair to the system. Just because we can't have reformation, just as we can't have concepts of restorative justice, hang the man. So it's a failure of the state. State cannot promote violence. State must speak the language of healing, peace, but does not mean state is weak. When the state speaks the language of peace, it is speaking from a sense of strength, because it can hang him. It can punish him in any way it wants, yet it wants to reform him and heal him.
And
send him.
Compassion.
And demonstrate compassion. You're so right. It demonstrates compassion. It's spreading peace and non-violence in society and not encouraging tooth for tooth. Tomorrow somebody says, well, you hung that man, we hung him on the street. So you did it by law, we did it as a society. What's the difference?
Kiran Bedi, police officer, still a distinguished career ahead of us, ahead of her, more to do. What more is there for you to do as a police officer, and do you think of what you might do when you're no longer in the police service, with all the energy and the drive and the commitment and the passion?
Rajiv, I have very vital 2.5 years of service to go. They are very vital. I've got to reach where I have to reach. My career has to reach me.
Where is that?
Which is the Police Commissionership of Delhi. Because all of us, when we join our careers, have a dream. And that is where seniority and merit should take me, all right? I'm at that vital decision. So I'm just waiting for that final decision. I think that final decision will decide what do I do with the rest of my life. I have plenty to do. You know what? It's either winning this way or winning this way. If I get my due, which if destiny so wills, and that decision should come only if God wills, not with man wills. Not because I will it, but nature wills it. If nature wills it this way, win-win, because it's nature. Because nature must be with that decision. But if nature wills it otherwise, this will be great, because that's freedom. That's total freedom. Freedom out of things all 24 hours mine. I don't have to spend 10 hours.
What will you do as Police Commissioner of Delhi?
As Police Commissioner of Delhi?
Well, give us the 3 key initiatives that you'd like
Everybody will have to be a partner in policing. Everyone.
That's one. Number 2.
Okay, everybody will be a partner, 1. 2, I would love to see more and more welfare. The police constable should also feel total partnership. He should be a stakeholder in the policing. He should be equally rewarded and recognized. So would I want his families to be inducted. So A is public partnership.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
No, second is internal partnership. Where is second? Third is grooming leadership. I love to see leaders groomed, because I'm not going to be there forever. Who is the next? Plan successions, groom leaders, so that this city continues to get people who believe in public police partnership.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bedi.
Okay.
And here's a prayer to the future police commissioner.
God be there.
Thank you, that was wonderful.
Thank you.